Joan, I want you to tell me what position you have in Maine politics right now.
Well, I'm in my second term of in the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And you represent?
Camden and Rockport.
Mm-hmm. How many people are there in the House of Representatives?
There are a lot. There are 151 of us,
Wow.
and we each represent a district of about 8,500 people, voters.
I see, divided 85.
Yeah,
You're a Democrat, right?
I am a Democrat.
Would you describe yourself as a liberal, conservative, moderate? How would you
Yeah.
describe yourself in the Democratic range?
Well, it's been interesting for me. I've been an advocate most of my life for various things: environment, women's issues, and so I was always on the side of advocating for the things I thought were important.
Mm-hmm.
But being in the legislature, you really have to weigh a lot of different points of view, a lot of different aspects of things, the effects of things, and I found I've become more moderate being in the legislature.
What is your background pre-politics? What sort of work or life did you have?
Yeah, I've had a varied life, like lots of people. I think I've been living my bliss in some ways. I've been very lucky. I was a stay-at-home mom for the years until my children were in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started volunteering with a women's resource center, and we started gathering a bunch of people. This was in Boulder, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a lot of needs for addressing the issues of battered women who would come into our center.
Mm-hmm.
So I headed up a task force and founded a whole program for battered women and their children, and that went on to starting a state coalition in Colorado, and then I chaired the national coalition against domestic violence based in Washington, D.C. And then I went on a vacation when I was living in Boulder, and my vacation was an Outward Bound course at Hurricane Island Outward Bound School here in Maine. And I fell in love with the way Outward Bound works with people and helps people become more than they know, or do more than they think they can.
These are two fairly similar communities, Boulder and Camden.
Yeah, a lot of similarities. So anyway, I went to work for Outward Bound, first as an instructor in Colorado, and then I became the associate director for California, working for the West Coast Outward Bound School. Then went back to Colorado, and I was Mark Udall's deputy director. He was the executive director.
Uh-huh.
And was then recruited to run for be a candidate for the president's position here at Hurricane Island Outward Bound School, and that's what brought me to Maine. I'm very lucky.
It just seems like your natural bent to be doing what you're doing. You really followed your instincts.
I have, yeah. And Outward Bound. I worked for Outward Bound for 20 years, and it was a wonderful way to help people by helping them feel confident to do more and to be of service in the world, and to feel confident about moving forward. And then when I left Outward Bound, I took kind of a year off, and I did a little work with the Maine Photographic Workshops, and then went to work for Brownie Carson at the Natural Resources Council of Maine, which really led me to learn about the legislature, and which is what made me start thinking about, well, when I retire, that might be something I could do.
Would you advise young people to get themselves involved in politics the way you have?
Absolutely. We have a lot of young legislators. A number of them are in their 20s and 30s, very effective, energetic, bright, wonderful young people. And, we're a people's legislature, and a lot of people, most people, have jobs as well as being in the legislature. It's a lot of work. It's not easy to do. We've got teachers and, lawyers, not so many lawyers actually, but we've got business people, and we've got all kinds of people in the legislature.
I'm married to
So
a
it's
teacher.
great.
I can't imagine how a teacher could do that and also be in the legislature.
Well, they get a leave
I see.
from the classroom so that they teach part of the year. Remember, the legislature is only part-time. It's 6 months the first year, and 4 months the second year.
I see.
So it's not, it's not year round. But when I was working, I worked a lot, especially in domestic violence, but also in the environmental work that I did around changing laws and lobbying at the federal level as well as at the state level. So that's an effective way for people. I used to think that I didn't make any difference or that my vote didn't count. But it makes a huge difference. And if I get letters from people or emails or phone calls telling me of their point of view, it really makes a big, big difference. So public participation, whether they're young or older, or it makes a big difference. And that's one of the reasons I love Maine, is we're a small enough community that people know me, I know them, and their voice makes a difference on both sides of the aisle. It's really important, in fact, to find different points of view. Nothing is ever as simple as it starts out seeming.
What big issues are you involved in now? Issues that are dear to you, or issues that are important to all of us?
Well, I'm on the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, so certainly maintaining the integrity of our environment in Maine is really, really important. And there's been a big push to look at regulatory reform and how can we help our economy, which is in trouble right now, and yet maintain the preservation and the importance of our natural environment, which is, it's the gem in the crown of Maine.
Right.
So I think that's probably my most important focus, but I also think there are really big issues facing our state that we've got to tackle. Taxes, health insurance, our infrastructure, our roads and bridges are in terrible shape. Those are critical issues for us in the years ahead. I think we've got to do more bonding. Interest rates are low right now. Maine's budget doesn't allow for any extra working capital money. It's all operational, so bonding is a way of getting a loan from the bank to invest in your business. And
Is there
to do that.
the bonding, yes, the interest rate is so low right now. Do you find that the Republicans are more amenable to using the bond system to raise money for the government?
Well, they weren't last year. Governor LePage said no bonding at all, so we had none. And that's been especially devastating for our roads. I am hopeful that this next session, starting in January, there will be more interest in looking at some bonding. I know that the Legislative Council just yesterday was deciding which bills to allow in for this next session other than the carryover bills we had. And I haven't heard the results of that yet, but I'm very hopeful that we will be able to bring in some bonding.
Have you worked very much with Governor LePage?
No, and the legislature doesn't per se. I mean, we're separate bodies, so it's the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches. But he drafts the first budget, and that comes to the legislature, and so and he has certainly he can bring in a bill whenever he wants to. So in terms of, I've worked with his representatives, certainly. I mean, the commissioner of DEP, various parts of his administration have helped, the negotiations that we've needed to make around certain bills.
I noted, I read in the newspaper the other day that Governor LePage's popularity rating has improved from, I think, 31% to 47% in the last 6 months or so. And I asked myself why that was, and I couldn't come up with an answer. Do you have any idea why that change might have taken place, or what it means? Or if it's true, really?
Well, I saw the report about that poll as well. I think LePage is, he has now hired some people who are better handlers, if you will. He's not making some of the erratic and, in my opinion, rather senseless statements and making some of the decisions he made in the very beginning, which had no point, really, in my opinion, like taking the murals down
Yes.
and some of the things that were so controversial. I think he's doing a better job of staying on message, and I think he's getting good help to do that. I still am very worried about many of his proposals, such as cutting the monies coming to municipalities if they don't reduce regulations, which is
Yes, this is
taking away some local rule, which is tantamount to Maine's thinking. And he's always been popular, I think, with the far right of the Republicans. I don't think that's changed, and I mean, it's hard to know. I think he's doing a better job with his message.
Now, this proposal of his that you mentioned about taking revenues away from municipalities that don't reduce the regulation, what regulations does he want them to reduce?
I don't know yet. I think he's just saying any regulations that the state has, the municipalities can't do anything more restrictive than what the state is allowing. And that means, well, legislature passed, I didn't vote for it, but passed to allow fireworks in the state. And many municipalities now, Portland and some others, are presenting measures to restrict fireworks in their municipality. So I think it's a problem to say that the state mandates everything, because it doesn't give the municipalities the ability to do what they. Plus, it has the. If he withdraws that money, it puts more and more burden on property taxes. And
Right.
I mentioned taxes as one of the biggest problems we have. We did a tiny little tax reduction within the budget last year, but we shouldn't do tax reform through the budget process. We need to really overhaul the way we do taxes, because more and more we reduce the income tax, but the property taxes keep growing, and they're huge, and it's about our schools. So in my opinion, we need to get it out of the legislature, put it in a bipartisan think tank, some good, smart, tax knowledgeable people, and come up with an overall change in how we tax our people, which would include, in my opinion, looking hard at sales tax, where we tax people who are coming in from out of state. We are one of the lowest in the nation for the kind of sales tax
I see.
we
That's a
not only
potential
ask
source
for,
of
but also, we only tax a few items. We could broaden the number of items we tax. And 1 penny even on the sales tax would, if we even earmarked that for education, that would do a huge amount for reducing our property taxes.
And if you were taxing people who came from out of state and bought something, that would not cause any Mainers any pain.
Right. I mean, Mainers might want to buy those same things, so they'd have to pay a penny more too. But most of those things, in my opinion, should be more luxury items. Certainly not the basics of food and
What sort of things are you talking about?
Oh, I don't. Well, I think we did have a proposal that got defeated in a referendum, and it taxed it taxed things like I don't know, luxury items. What would they be? Things you don't really need. Toys, vacation stuff, taxis might be needed.
Yeah.
I'd need to give that a little more thought, but I think it's the incidentals, the things that you purchase because they would be nice to have as opposed to need to have.
Whatever you find in LL Bean.
Well, and a lot of that's in the beholder, isn't it? Whether or not what you need. Like, we do need bean boots, that's for sure.
Yes,
Maine.
we do.
I wouldn't want to tax those more. We're going to switch here. I'm going to ask you a few
Sure.
questions because it's always interesting to me. Maine has the largest retired population in the
Yes.
state. You're one of them. I'm one of them.
I'm not really retired, but that's all right.
Well, but we're of a certain age.
Yes,
that-
we're certainly of that
yeah.
age. Yes.
Yeah, and I noticed, speaking of transportation and roads, that there's been some discussion of a bus system or something in our area. And to me, when I think of if I can't drive, I'm going to have a hard time. And what are your thoughts about
Well,
the challenges for
That's
those
a challenge.
of us?
That's a particular challenge for me because my wife is a school teacher,
Mhm.
and we're a one-car family.
Yeah.
So my choices are taking her to school and having the car, or letting her drive and staying home.
Yeah.
Now, if there were a bus system that went around, that would be a very convenient and nice thing. I think it would be a great thing to have a bus system.
I do too, but we know from experience that bus systems can't be supported just by those of us who will pay for the ride.
Right.
How can we have a bus system in our community if it can't be supported by the revenues that they charge?
That's a philosophical question, and also, a big philosophical question, which I feel very strongly about. I think that we all have a stake in making this the best possible society that we can. And the people who benefit from it most have the biggest stake. By that I'm talking about the people who are wealthy. They are the greatest beneficiaries of society, and it is in their self-interest to try to maintain and improve that society as best they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
This is my very strong belief. So I feel that for Camden and Rockport to have a bus system is an improvement in our community, that even those people who don't partake of it, or who don't often partake of it, can take some satisfaction in, because it makes it better for all the rest of us. And what improves society, what makes life easier and better for any members of society, improves the entire community. And
Lifts all boats. Rising
lifts all
tide
boats.
lifts all boats.
Absolutely lifts
Yeah.
all boats. And to have this philosophical standpoint, you have to believe that it is our obligation, our moral obligation, to try and help our neighbors. And because helping our neighbors helps us too.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of my great problems with politics today. I think there's a sizable group of people who are not terribly interested in the golden rule, and who are not really convinced that we are our brother's keepers. And they are very concerned with themselves. For example, they want to keep every penny they earn, but they don't realize that they would earn nothing if it weren't for a peaceful and prosperous society that surrounds them.
Yeah, I think this is a really important discussion to have. What is the role of government, and what is, and I do think you and I are both Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the reason, I remember I did an article a long time ago about why I was a lifelong Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
and then they interviewed, I don't remember who it was who was a lifelong Republican, but I think there is to me, a fundamental philosophy about that government does have a role in our society. It's not to do everything. It's not to be a socialist state necessarily, but it does has an important role to make sure that things like transportation, things like assuring safety net for those who need it most, is there for people. And I agree with you. I think it helps. It helps all people in our society. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a really important role for private enterprise as well. And I think small businesses, especially here in Maine, is key. And even I think our corporations have gotten a bit too large and have a bit too much power, but still they play an important role. They hire so many people to do the work that then pays them to then support the economy. But I think finding that balance between acknowledging the importance of government and the importance of having good roads and the importance of having public transportation, so that you don't have to drive your wife to school to be able to go out and spend money in Camden, you know. You know, I think that's a really important debate that
I have always felt that government, I agreed with Abraham Lincoln about government, that it's of, by, and for the people, and that government is the combined might of the people, economically and philosophically, and government can accomplish things that individuals, even groups of individuals, can't hope to accomplish.
Right.
So is there a role for government? Of course there's a role for government, but government is us. We
exactly.
are the government.
That's right.
We are the government, the good parts and the bad parts.
Mm-hmm.
The government reflects us very well. And if we are unhappy with the government, we should look at ourselves a little bit, because it is us. It reflects us quite well.
Well, and that gets back to your question about the polarization of our politics right now, and I think it does. It's all about us, the people, more so than even the politicians who are there. It's what, you know, they are representing what we, the people, are asking them to represent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping we'll have some shifts in the years ahead, because we're not, you know,
I'm
we're
looking
not
forward
making
to the coming
progress.
elections, and
Yeah.
hoping that some change will take place. I have a feeling that the moderates among us, who have been marginalized in some ways. I mean, I'm a Democrat. I've always thought of myself as a moderate Democrat. I'm not
Right.
a far left Democrat, that's for sure. But I feel that because of the polarization, all the moderates have been forced into the extreme camps, or forced toward the extreme camps, and they've been forced to overstate their own cases, both sides.
Mm. Yeah, I think Maine especially is a moderate state.
It is,
and I
yes.
think we pride ourselves on that. I'm proud of that. It's we think independently,
Mm-hmm.
and we are known certainly through our congressional representatives
Mm-hmm.
in the Senate and in Congress. And so I believe that will prevail. And I think certainly in my going door to door and talking with neighbors in Camden and Rockport, I find people are very sensible, and they want leaders who will be sensible and who will make accommodations. So
Do you feel that Camden and Rockport is representative of the rest of Maine, or is this an unusual place as far as Maine is concerned, at least politically?
well, I mean, I think it's very representative. We're a third, a third, a third. We're a third Republicans, a third Independents, and a third Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the way the whole state is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the rural part of the state tends to have more, it tends to be a bit more conservative, and perhaps than we are in the coast.
Mm-hmm.
But their needs are pretty different when you're looking at the kind of agricultural struggle. Although we've got that in our communities too. We've got blueberry growers right here
Mm-hmm.
in West Rockport. We've got small farms. We've got, we're a rural state, even though Camden and Rockport were this.
Well, we're not exactly a metropolis.
We're not a metropolis, which is why we love it here.
Indeed it is.
Yeah.
Indeed it is.
Yeah. Maine, when I moved to Maine, I thought, well, I made a 5-year commitment in my role as the CEO at Outward Bound. And I 5-year commitment, and I was planning on moving back to Colorado. I even kept my house back there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now 20 years this October, and I'm still here, and I wouldn't think of moving back. My mom still lives there. My son lives 2 hours north. He's in Laramie, Wyoming. My sons, who are both Westerners, thinks I've moved to a foreign country. But I think Maine, the community spirit here, even though there may be disagreements about politics, certainly in my community, there is a willingness to talk about it. My former opponent, Helen Shaw, was a Republican. I mean, we're friends. We see each other. We wave. We had a very respectful.
She came to my house electioneering.
Yeah, sure. I love that about Maine. And really, with 1.3 million people, that's as big as the Denver metro area was where I came from. And you know people all over the state, and you can work together better because of that. I think you have to know the people and build trust and work together. And I think that, from what I read and hear, is what's lacking in Washington, D.C. too.
So you feel this face-to-face, knowing people outside of the political sphere makes doing politics a little easier.
Oh yes, because it took me a couple of years to. I still am not totally comfortable with the word politician. I remember knocking on a door, and this young fellow high school guy opened the door, and he said, "Hey, Mom, it's a politician." And I just kind of blanched, and well, I guess I am. But in Maine, it is a citizens' legislature. We're just normal, regular people holding down other jobs, members of our community. So it's not a career job the way it may be in some of the larger states.
I find Maine a very political place.
Do you?
I think, but you know, it's mainly because of the part of my life that I've spent here, I guess. And if I had spent that part of my life someplace else, I might say the same thing. But I mean, we start with the Board of Selectmen, and we start with all kinds of local things. We're always debating politics, and it's a constant discussion amongst us all.
About issues that affect our communities.
Yes, about issues that affect our communities.
Yeah, but I don't feel like we have a machine, a political
No,
machine in our state.
No.
Even though we've got the Maine Heritage Policy Center, and we've got the Democrat Party, and we've got the Republican Party, still they're not.
No, they're not machines.
Although we've got outside money now starting to come in with that new Supreme Court ruling that may change that a bit. But in terms of being in Rockport and Camden, yes, we have our select boards and we have issues, but they're so local, and there are things that people care about and give voice to.
Yes, indeed.
Which I think is marvelous. Drives you crazy sometimes, probably. I think the select boards have the hardest jobs. I really do. They're,
Well, they have to deal with their neighbors.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, and they deserve lots of thanks. Yeah. So, yeah. I am worried about the next governor's election. I mean, I expect Elliott Cutler will run again.
Oh, yeah.
And I have no idea right now who the Democrat candidate might be, but I think we could well have another split the way we have before. If we're serious about being concerned about LePage's policies, which I am, we've got to figure this out a little better. So
Maybe we should nominate Elliott Cutler as a Democrat.
I don't think he'd ever do that, but you never know.
But we've done well with independents here.
We have done well with independence. Yeah.
Elliott Cutler would be governor right now if the election were 3 days later than it was.
That may be hard to know.
Because it was switching fast. It didn't quite switch fast enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I switched my vote
Yeah.
when I realized that Libby didn't have a chance in the world.
Yeah.
That I had to vote for
It'll be an interesting year.
Yes, it
We'll
is.
see.
Politics is always interesting.
It is, and it is in Maine because we know the people a lot, I think, and sometimes that's not such a good thing.
Well, for the rest of us, it's the ultimate soap opera, and we're on the set.
Yeah, that's right. We are on the set. That's right. Yeah. Thank you for this, Harvey. It's been a pleasure. It's really nice.